Hello, men. Just a short rant. I don't know if it's going to be a short rant. You never know. I wanted to talk a little bit about self-sabotage that leads to isolation. We often talk about the isolated male in here. It was one of Spetsnaz's best videos, I think, the isolated male. But he doesn't hit about on the reasons of why males isolate. And I think one of the major reasons why MGTOWs isolate is self-sabotage. I just noticed on YouTube, I went to a video, and one of the old producers that doesn't identify as a MGTOW no more, he actually went through a whole lot of friends in MGTOW and moved from one to the next and offended one and offended the next and offended the next and offended the next. And all in all, I think the guy's a pretty okay cat, but he had this need to self-sabotage every one of those relationships, and now he's sitting there making videos all by himself, eating a bag of Captain Crunch and smoking pot. Very disturbing. It was very disturbing to me because he was isolated. He had no one to talk to. I look what Jung says about the individual. Individualization is what we search for. He suggests that individualization is not quite what we think it is. It's self-rationalization. Individualization comes from the collective unconscious. What we're talking about is self-rationalization is getting comfortable with yourself, learning who you are, because all in all, you are a byproduct of all you've been in life, all you've taken in. And that's individual for every person. That's where your individuality comes from. Self-rationalization seems to stand in opposition to self-alienation, but I really don't think that's the case. Self-alienation would invite the mistake and belief that we get through the world alone, and that our individual efforts are worthy of self-centeredness and the rewards we do, and this Burgess individualism that I always talk about. No, that's not really the truth. There's a difference here between rationalizing, self-rationalizing, and self-alienation. And a lot of people see this individualism as self-alienation, not self-rationalization. We often we grow up to become our true selves. We get comfortable with our persona or our social, our social individuality and our otherness. I talk a lot about the otherness. These roles we imagine playing in this world, these masks we wear about what's authentic and what's not authentic. Individualization, Jung suggests, is the ultimate goal of life, but it's just simply self-rationalization. So I guess Jung is right in a way. What we often do is we're looking for individuality, and we want to rationalize that individuality. So we self-rationalize what we are, what we can be. We all have our limits, and we all know those limits. The goal of life, I don't know what the goal of life is. To find the courage to be who you are. Individualization is a process. It's an ongoing psychology, a development that fulfills the individual's qualities that are given. A process in which we can define as who the persona is. Now, what happens here is people self-rationalize, they get their individuality, they're special, they're unique. Everybody is unique in a way. Now, individualistic emphasis on individualism, on the other hand, shows a self-centeredness, a selfishness, that you put everything else away rather than work in a group. The aim of the individualist is to divest himself from what we would call the persona and the collective unconscious. So is it bad to be so individual that you separate yourself from the group? Yes. Someone once said on Nico Chasky's last video that let me see how we put this. Nico is so MGTOW that he just went MGTOW on MGTOW, and he separated himself from the group, and now he's that individual, that Burgess individual, that self-individual. Is that a good thing? Depending on how you're looking at it. You can be so individual that you separate yourself from the group. Self-sabotage will lead to isolation. And sometimes it's conforming to a group's wishes. Sometimes it's, taking on a language of the group, like MGTOW has a different language. We all know what we're talking about here in MGTOW. We have a different language, but if you come in here and you try to use a different language, we'll say, no, you're not quite hitting the idea. So please listen up and take on the language, and then you can be a part of the group. And it's a simple request. It's not something that's unfounded. It shows a small bit of intelligence, and maybe it's being inclusive in a way, but it's not a lot to ask. If all the friends are wearing red shirts that day, is it too much to ask that you put on a red shirt? You've seen that in your life. If the team is wearing yellow shirts for the baseball game, is it too much to ask, if you want to be the first baseman, to put on a yellow shirt? Now, when we look at the team, we see several players. We see the first baseman, the second baseman, the third baseman, the shortstop, the left fielder, the right fielder, the center fielder, and the pitcher and the catcher. The pitcher and catcher work together. The infielders work together. The outfielders work as individuals. If you want to be the first baseman, it takes a special talent to be the first baseman. And everybody knows that the first baseman is the first baseman. Just because he has the same shirt on as the second baseman and the third baseman and all the rest of the players doesn't mean that he's a separate team unto himself. He's not Bugs Bunny. He can't play all the positions. So you're working within a team as the first baseman, and you have your own certain identity as the first baseman. You've rationalized that. You said to yourself, this is what I want to be. You asked a coach, hey, can I try out? You did. You managed that. That's your talent. You self-rationalized into that position because that's you. It doesn't mean that you're the second baseman because you're wearing a yellow shirt, or you're the third baseman because you have a yellow shirt on. You're still the individual first baseman. It's an identity. It gives the group an identity so the group knows who is who. But I see a lot of men railing against that. I'm not going to label myself. I'm going to be the strong, lone wolf, Burgess individual that does my own thing, and you guys will have to accept me. And that usually does not work out. It only leads to isolation. There's been a lot of studies done in group dynamics and how children pick groups in schools. We have like goth groups and we have preppy groups, and we have sports fans groups, sports player groups. We have the chess club groups, the intellectual groups. You know, you've seen them all. And you know, if you want to be a part of that group, that there's one thing about each one of those groups that you're going to have to do. If you want to be in the chess club group, you have to play chess. If you want to be in a sports fan group, you have to read the morning paper to see what the sports news was. It's not a lot to ask, and that's how they talk. That's what they like. That's what they identify as their own unique personalities. And from there, it spans out to a lot of different things. It's how you work in a group. I don't know what you call it. I just say conform a little bit to the group, and the group will conform to you. Everything will go along a lot better. But in here, I've noticed just a sad, sad case of male isolation. And there's one thing that just always bothered me is why the men self-sabotage their relationships with other males. Why they're so mean. Why they're so... in some cases they're really angry. And every time they get an opportunity to lash out at a person, they even lash out at their friends or people that are trying to help them, or people that are trying to be, inclusive of them, or people that are just trying to be sympathetic or empathetic to them. You notice that a lot in that life. I notice it a lot in life, where people that are empathetic towards somebody, an outsider, somebody that wasn't in a group, to somebody that looked lonely, tries to strike up a conversation with the isolated male, and he lashes out at him. So there's a lot of work to be done on the subject, but I think it intrinsically comes down to the male himself. He may like the isolation. He may not know he's self-sabotaging. He just may have some deep-seated anger in him, or some deep-seated pain, that every time someone says, please, just trust me a little, he lashes out. And it's hard to watch, and we get a lot of them. So, identifying these people and trying to be friendly to them and trying to be somewhat sympathetic has become sort of, my thing lately, and without a lot of true fertility on that, because these people are they're quite hard to get along with, and they're quite hard to they argue every point. It's just in their nature to be that way. But like I said, if you want to be a part of the group, sometimes you have to conform a little bit. Hey, we're all wearing Monkgtow shirts around here, and that's just the truth. And with that Monkgtow shirt comes a Monkgtow ideology, and a Monkgtow demeanor, and some Monkgtow characteristics. After that, you can be whatever you want to be. And that's all I wanted to talk about a little today. About 8 minutes rant. That's not too bad. So I just wanted to say, guys, and especially this one individual that I watched on the broadcast eat a bowl of cereal, sing 2 songs, leave uncomfortable moments of silence while he was sitting there isolated all by himself, and had all the opportunity in the world to call a friend and say, hey, you want to talk? You want to chat live? Yeah. I would have said yeah. I know a lot of guys would have said yeah. But nobody wants to get yelled at, and nobody wants to get picked on, and nobody wants to get told they're wrong. So, if these men keep self-sabotaging, we will have to witness these totally isolated males, and it's sad to look at. It's almost unbearably uncomfortable. And that's all I wanted to talk today about. The sadness of it. Thanks a lot, Monkgtows. Y'all take care.